And it says that we are now live. So, guys, if you are here, it is because you are here to watch us talk to Jim Wilbourne, author of the Continua Chronicles, who is having a book drop today. But before we get into any of that, let's do some introductions, because I'm Andrew of the Wizardly Reads. And if you were here on the channel, then obviously you probably know who I am. So I'm going to stop talking. And Kay, I think I got the point right on the first go. Kay, you can take it from here, and then we'll introduce the man of the hour.
Absolute pro. My name is Kayla. My channel is called Kay's Hidden Shelf. I read fantasy, science fiction, and I like talking about books. So I'm here to assist in the interrogation of Jim Wilbourne.
Yes, interrogation.
And I'm Jim Wilbourne, author of the Continua Chronicles and pretend YouTuber.
I believe that's called AuthorTube, or do I have that wrong?
Sure, let's go with that.
Yeah. Going with AuthorTube. Cool. I can dig it.
So yeah, that's me. I have a new book coming out. It's called Strangers in the Promised Land. Coming out. It's out now today, and you can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it direct from me from the Emergent Realms website. I
do have the Emergent Realms website linked in the description down below if people want to go and click on there and peruse while we chit the chat or shoot. Yeah. Anyway, anyway. So how's everybody doing this evening while I act super slap happy?
Oh man, I'm doing fine.
Okay.
It's been a fun day.
How's the book release going? Do you have any numbers yet? Is it too early?
I haven't put all the numbers together. People ask me stuff like this, and I'm just like, I don't really care. So I don't have. So let me see. I bet I could pull up something right now for that book specifically.
So do you go into the KDB dashboard or?
Yeah, I'm looking at the dashboard, and on Amazon I have 11 sales today for Strangers in the Promised Land. And I'm not 100% sure how many pre-orders I got. I know I got 6 on Amazon before today.
Nice.
And direct, I got, let me see here.
Now, is Strangers in the Promised Land going to be available on Kindle Unlimited?
Yes, it is.
Nice.
I always like to let people know different ways that they can consume the book.
Yes. So it looks like I got 13 pre-orders that I shipped off yesterday. There's a few more that I still have to fulfill today because more came in today. So,
well, that's good.
Yeah, for direct sales. So
we do have some Anonymous in the house, and he wants to know what you did for promotion.
Almost nothing.
Almost nothing.
I did very little this time.
It's a solid plan.
I did. I told my email list about it. I posted on Twitter about it. I guess, on Facebook. I did very little this time compared to what I did for the 7th Cadence. 7th Cadence was like a whole thing that took up a lot of time. But this time around, I kind of underplayed it a little bit. It's kind of a shorter book.
Yeah, it comes in just right over 100 pages.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, I kind of underplayed it a little bit. Also because I want to do other cool things going forward. And, I didn't want to use up all my, I didn't want to use up all my space online until the really cool thing that I have planned comes up. So,
okay, so there is a really cool thing planned to come out here soon.
Oh yeah,
nitpick at the author a little bit.
So I can say a little bit about it. I can't give too many specifics because I don't know all the specifics, but people keep asking about hardbacks and people keep asking about audiobooks. And I'm trying to figure out how to accomplish both of those things next year.
Don't toy with my emotions, Jim. I am a sucker for hardcovers.
Emotions or wallet?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I guess a little bit of both. Jim's been very generous with me, so I think like I've got digital copies that I've purchased, but like he's provided me with physical editions to review. I've read Seventh Cadence. That was way earlier this year, I believe,
mhm.
and absolutely loved it. Do you wanna discuss some of your Spiffbo 8 kind of experience and how that
Yeah,
went for you?
yeah. At first, I was super nervous to apply because I was like, well, what if I get completely like drugged through the mud for writing a book? You know,
That's not what they're about.
yeah,
That doesn't
I
happen.
know, but the irrational paranoia in me
Yeah.
just kind of immediately went there. I'm like, I may as well not put myself through that. And then I was on Discord, and I can't remember who, but somebody was like, "Yeah, just do it." And I was like, "All right, fine, I'll just do it." So I did it, and it was fine. Like nothing awful happened to me.
Yeah.
So that was very surprising.
It's
The
basically
world
free exposure.
Right.
Yep.
So I basically got free exposure. I got some sales off of it, which was very nice. Um,
With a
and
beautiful cover like that, I can't imagine why.
right.
I mean, look, it's
So
right. You can't see my edition because it's in a box, but Kay has it right there
Let's see.
yeah,
for everybody's viewing pleasure.
yeah. And it's kind of strange because I think I like it better in person than when you can see it online. It's one of those weird covers that kind of doesn't do itself justice sometimes if you just see a little picture of it online.
Well,
But
yeah,
Yeah.
because one of the things that I didn't even realize it isn't until you read the book that you realize that's a scene from the book, which I absolutely love when people
mhm,
do this. It makes my nerd heart so very happy
right,
when it's a scene from the book, but also that's underwater.
right.
That's all I'll say about that scene. But like it just like if you see it from far away, you can't see the little air bubbles that are there on the cover. And that's
Right.
super cool. Like it was funny because I finished the book and then it took me 2 months later and I was just kind of sitting there. I think I was filming a tag or something and I was talking about the book. And I
Mhm.
looked at it and all of a sudden I froze and went, oh. Because I saw the bubbles finally.
Yeah, I mean, I did do that on purpose. I really wanted it to be a scene from the book. Um, and because the book is, I would say it's a little bit of a slow burn. Um, because of that, it was kind of like, well, what's big enough to actually put on this cover? Like, I can't just like, I don't know, put two characters sitting in a tavern. Like that would be boring. Like it would have to be something interesting. So I picked out
It
the
worked for Travis Baldry.
Yeah.
well, true, but it was totally on brand.
No,
So,
that's entirely true.
but like, and I only had a few scenes that I could realistically pick from. And when I talked to Billy Christian, the cover artist, this was one of the scenes that we came up with. One day I'm gonna have to send you the concept art that he drew because he drew two different versions of it. One was closer to what I asked for, and one was pretty much that. And I was like, oh, ignore what I said. Do that. so we ended up going with that direction. It was way better. They're similar, but what I asked for was stupid. And he
No,
had
no.
the good
I've
sense
seen
to like say, I think this is what you meant. So
yeah, I've seen concepts of like where authors will do. Like I've seen multiple concepts where it's a stick figure, and like they've sent it to a cover artist, and we're like, it's just like a figure bird that's supposed to be like a phoenix or something,
A
and then
blob.
it's just yeah, like whatever you just said, it was incorrect. It probably wasn't dumb. It was just not what it was meant to be.
well, I mean, okay, so what I asked him to do, I didn't draw anything. I described to him what that scene was,
Mhm.
and I described it accurate to the scene, and he changed little things about
Mm.
the scene that made it better. Um, and I didn't really go back and change the scene really to match that because I wasn't really worried about that. It was close enough that it didn't matter.
It's a dramatization.
Yeah.
Right. But because of that, I was like, oh, this looks way cooler than how I actually envisioned it in my head. So that's fine. That's perfectly fine. So
I have to bring this up because otherwise I'm going to catch so much flack from Dominish and Nico. And you probably know what I'm going to talk about, but since we're talking about the cover, do you have any comments on the little lamp that made it into the cover? Because it was funny when he actually did when I did my blind book book cover challenge. There we go. He mentioned that I was going to get it super easy because there was a lamp on the cover, and apparently the Wizardly Duo Discord had been chatting about this when everybody was reading it, and it just it's like this little detail that they fixated on, and I didn't notice.
You know what? I'm not sure I noticed it either. So,
yeah, I didn't either.
Hold on, I'm looking.
I had to pick it up.
There's this time on one of the tables. There's a little electrical lamp,
like on the far side with the shelf.
See?
Oh, hold on 1 second.
Now I've got you examining your cover.
Yeah.
It's this fun little.
Wait, where is it? Can you point to where is it on the desk, Kayla?
Is it like the dark bluish thing or the green thing?
Yep, like you've got your thumb right on it.
Right. So it's like the dark blue thing on the far end of the desk.
Blue thing on the far end. Oh.
Isn't that the magnifying glass? That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought it is. And now that I'm looking at it, that's totally a lamp in front of a magnifying glass. And I never picked that apart. I never, ever picked that apart.
So Nico says it was 100% Dominish. There was a whole thread about this. now that I've brought that up.
I mean, obviously it's canon now, so it's just
now it's canon.
Now I'm gonna have to explain it in the next book.
I think this just goes to show you can pick apart the cover after reading this book.
Strangers in the Promised Land is Continua 1.5. And you kind of wrote this one to fill out, because we have a couple characters who are left. I'm going to keep this non-spoiler, who are kind of left riding off into the sunset, as per se. And we needed to figure out a way in order to continue their story to fit them into future entries in Continua, correct?
Yeah, so it's interesting. This story was one that I kind of wanted to tell since, while I was writing the 7th Cadence, this kind of story started tickling my brain. And I realized in order to write this story, it just could not be in the 7th Cadence. Like, the timeline wouldn't line up. You know, there would be this huge ending, and then it would be like this really long Lord of the Rings style epilogue of Amy and Mara just, doing their thing before the book ends. Like, the pacing wouldn't work. So I thought, you know what? I really want to tell this story anyway. And I'm just going to tell it in the best way I know how, as a standalone thing. It doesn't completely stand alone, but it does not have any bearing on the following book.
I appreciate
write it that way.
Well, I appreciate the novella because as I was reading 7th Cadence and we were getting towards the end, I was just like, what's going on with them? And like I had this confusion in my brain going, and then all of a sudden we get this 1.5 novella, and it's just, that's what I wanted. That's what I felt the story needed to do in order to kind of bring them up to where everybody else is with Gabriel and all of them, which I can't wait for the second book because of where everything's just been left. Let's talk a little 7th Cadence. And Kayla, if you've got anything you want to talk about, feel free to tell me to be quiet.
No, it's all good. I just don't want to interrupt because you're
Oh,
asking great things.
I'm going straight up. This is sleep deprivation, and I have no notes.
Okay, so along that line, then, since we're talking about getting more about the characters, Mara and Amy in Strangers in the Promised Land, you also wrote a short story that I ended up reading right after Strangers
Mhm.
in the Promised Land as well, which kind of does the same thing, but for a different character and in a
Yeah.
different way. Can you talk about, I think it's called First Blood?
Right. Yeah. So First Blood, I wrote kind of as a character study. Um, while writing the seventh cadence. I had been writing along, and I thought, I don't know enough about this character to make her feel real to me. So I went back and I wrote some other material with her in it, just so I could flesh out her background. Like, what was her family dynamic like? What was,
Mhm.
what was her life in the desert like? Telly, this is for Telly, by the way, if you aren't familiar with this story. Um, and so I wrote those things, and I thought, you know what? These are fun. Someone might want to read them. So I put them on my mailing list, and that's how you can read that story. So,
I'm
um,
I'm gonna go do that.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
really
Go
quick.
for it.
Yeah, real
Um,
quick. You guys continue talking. No, I'm just kidding.
no, do what you gotta do. Do what you gotta do. In fact, you could probably read it before we finish talking. Um,
Yeah.
First Blood is it's almost flash fiction in its brevity.
So it's
I
like
think
10, 15 pages, something like that.
no, I mean it's about a scene. It's a scene long, I would say. So maybe about I would say maybe I don't know how long it is exactly, but I bet it's about 1,500 words. It's very short.
That's not too
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, a couple
Yeah.
pages.
I
Yeah,
could read that on a
yeah.
work break.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you could speed through it real quick.
So
Um,
would this be her prequel story?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, it's a short prequel story, and most people, I don't tell people, and I don't know if you've seen it yet, Kayla, but when you sign up for the mailing list, I promise that story to you. I send it to
Mhm.
you, and then a few weeks later, I just send you another one, just a
Oh,
pure surprise.
excuse me while I check this.
I don't know if you've gotten that email yet. It's kind of like an automated thing that kind of feeds out stories. Um,
Okay.
so
So you're just
well,
sending little flash fiction out for anybody who signs up for your
just those
newsletter.
two right now, but I have other ideas. And I'm going to be okay. So here's something really cool that I want to do, and this is getting real off topic, but it's
Oh
really
no,
cool.
no, no, no. Go
And I
for it.
want to get your guys' opinion. Anyone in the chat too. I mean, I want to know if you guys would be into this. So the seventh cadence went through a lot of revisions over its development, as I tried to figure out what direction I want to take the whole series in. And I ended up changing things in the story in a way so that I have scenes that I had to cut that went in very different directions. Um,
Mhm.
and I thought about doing a what if style series of short fiction that my mailing list gets for free of like saying, okay, this is how the story would have went if this happened instead.
Oh
And
yeah, absolutely. That
Yeah.
sounds awesome.
and kind of doing that kind of what if experience, just because I have those scenes and nothing to do with them. They're just sitting there on a
Well, I
folder
mean,
that nobody gets to see.
if Brandon Sanderson is anything to go by, The Way of King's Prime was wildly successful. So apparently it's a completely different what if kind of story. So,
Mhm.
or you could, yeah, like Anonymous, kind of going off what Anonymous is saying here, is you could compile all of those into
Mhm.
kind of either a lore tome
Mhm.
or something like that, or like a history novel, kind of like Germ did with Fire and Blood.
Right.
Germ,
Yeah.
George R. R.
Yeah.
Martin.
Yeah.
I shouldn't probably abbreviate that verbally. Um, but yeah, no, something like that would be totally cool. I had a
Yeah.
lot of fun beta reading Strangers in the Promised Land with
Mhm.
you, because then like I got to have a discourse and I'm like, well, this motivation and this
Right,
character,
yeah.
and I don't quite understand why they're doing this and why they're acting this specific way. There's just a lot within Continua that I'm excited to read about.
Mm-hmm.
Same. I feel like this is a chunky book, but there's a lot that happens. We get to see a lot of different characters. I feel like there's a lot to explore. And like Andrew said, just I want more. And you have my email.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, that's something I definitely want to work on. There's a lot of little things that I'm working on that takes a long time, like, special exclusive art. I just want to give it all to my mailing list for free, because anyone who's on there I just consider them like, okay, well, if you're willing to give me your email address, I'm just going to try to send you as much cool stuff as possible so that, I'm not just annoying you with stupid stuff. So,
I think I'm on your mailing list, but I'm not entirely sure. I'll rectify it either way.
yeah, it's a link at the back of the book. So, and it's not easy to get on my mailing list because that's the only place you can find a link to get to the mailing list is in the back of the book. That will change soon.
Okay.
But for right now, that's the only way, because I kind of want to only have people on who had read the book and really wanted to hear from me. And I will change that soon, because every author is like, what are you doing? That's really dumb. Some people just want to hear from you anyway. I'm like, yeah, but
I routinely get Zach Argyle emails, so
Yeah.
I know I'm on Zach's mailing list.
I think too, it's a nice way for readers to kind of like dip their toes in, get to know you a little bit, get to know a bit about your writing before diving into a series or a chunker.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I will fix that, and I will find a way to make it work. How I do that is TBR, or TB announced, TBA. Yeah, that's it. TBA.
TBD.
Yeah.
No TB.
TBD? To be decided? Oh, I've already determined. I know what it is, but
so
to be determined, I guess. I don't know.
I do want to kind of start talking about Continua and the world that you have built here. One of the coolest things that I love about the world that you've built is Titan. And the way that magic in this world is presented to a reader, it's not only very unique, but like it's also a very interesting way that, like, because you set up separate cultures and then you give them different beliefs, and then you set up a singular deity who is just a wizard who goes by the wizard Titan, and then he's got little spell books that people can then use if he's written it down to cast single spells. And I just, where did this idea come from?
Several sources. One was me trying to. I'm sorry, Bo. As soon as you get to the end of the book, you'll find it. I promise you.
It's in the epilogue. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, it came from several things. One was just the whole idea of what if, there was only one wizard ever. That question in my head was very interesting to me, because I had read book after book after book after book where a lot of people, or at least several people, were wizards. But what if there was only one? What would happen? How would that world history look like? And you know what? What if he was immortal in his time? Like, what if he had been around for a really long time? And part of that came from ideas about like Merlin, about, kind of how, there's only one real wizard around in the Arthurian legend that I know about. I'm not that big of a Arthurian legend person, so there might be other wizards that I'm not aware of, but he's the only one that I can recall. And the whole idea of like aging backwards was like a cool thing, and that's not something I implemented, but the fact that he aged backwards is like, oh man, he could. I don't know, what does that make his lifespan like? I mean, so I thought that's how I got to, that whole wizard god kind of idea. And then I guess the third element of that was me not wanting the characters to have I wanted them to have a hard time using magic. And I wanted it to feel like you almost had to earn it with the knowledge that you had to use magic. And it kind of created this almost magic system where I started to, and from my perspective, I'm, at least since I've released the book, I realized like, oh, I'm actually kind of writing a science fantasy story at the same time while writing epic fantasy, which is not science fantasy in the way that you would normally think of science fantasy, but it's become like between the Seventh Cadence and Strangers in the Promised Land, I'm using kind of scientific concepts that you would be able to be exposed to in your normal life for them to solve their problems. And you could do those same things yourself, even if you did not have magic, theoretically. So
one of my favorite things that you did in the book when it pertained to magic is there's a certain point in the story where a couple characters get some magical implements that kind of travel underground with them.
Yes.
But if you are standing on rock, they become utterly useless. And so like they can't get to you. So like if you're in a city where there's tons of rock, like this magic, if you try and rely on it, it is going to fail you.
Right.
And I thought the concept, the idea, I thought was incredibly creative. Like even after all of I'm close to 100 books since I read the Seventh Cadence, and this has still stuck with me as such a cool idea because it powers up your character, but at the same time it forces your characters to work smarter because if they're going to take advantage of it, then they have to be smart about how they go about it. Or if they're going to say, okay, I need to let that go, then they can figure out, like you said, how to do something in a more creative way instead of using magic as a crutch. And I love that's just one simple implementation of giving somebody a magical artifact, but then nerfing the crap out of it.
Yeah, it was kind of like an unforeseen thing because when the characters realized that was a big limitation, they didn't get warned about it. And for good reason, because who they got it from would have never had a reason to warn them about that from their perspective. So it was kind of one of those situations that I kind of giggled a little bit when I wrote that scene where the character realized that.
So was that kind of like a discovery writing moment? Did they call that pantsing?
So it was a partial pants, I would say, because when I was writing the scene, when I knew what needed to happen, and I was writing the scene, and I thought, okay, what are my character's options? Like this character is obviously very competent. How do I put them in a situation where they may not be able to escape? Like, what are the conditions of that? And then I thought, oh, wait, they have this tool now. And then I'm like, well, if they're inside a building, like, what would happen? Like, would it just come to them? Like, would it? And I'm like, well, no, because I need her to get captured. So obviously it wouldn't. And so it became this whole thing. And I was like, oh my God, this is actually kind of brilliant. And it sparked a lot of ideas that I haven't had a chance to implement yet. But that one little thing actually sparked many different ideas for book 2 that I'm going to play with. So that was fun. And really when I created that weapon, I was trying to find, obviously it's hard to compare this to something like this, but I was trying to find my lightsaber moment. Like I wanted to make something so cool that you wanted it. Whereas, because the lightsaber is like,
it's an icon.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a thing. And like when I was trying to create my magical weapon that I want to stick around, and it's not the only one, but like I wanted something that was different and unique, and you know, you might not see as often. So you know, that was kind of the building block of that. I was like, how do I make something that's really, really cool that that I haven't seen before? So that's where I went with that.
So my next question goes to Kayla.
Oh,
I want to know your favorite character.
oh, that's so hard. Don't do that.
Oh, I'm doing it. It's already happened.
Okay. It's hard because I do like quite a bit of the cast,
Mhm.
but I think because they're all complex in their own ways. So this is hard.
I know.
I think when it comes down to it, I have to put it in a tie. Can I do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There's no rules here.
So I would so I would put it with Telly and Amy because
Okay.
I like the growth that they get and the complexities of their decision making, how they come to be and where they come from, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 Andrew?
Okay. Yeah. No, I've got mine locked and loaded. It's Prince Gabriel.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. No. So what I love about Gabriel is he starts out as very much the petulant prince. Like, don't get me wrong, he doesn't understand like why we've gotten away from war. He wants to be militant. He sees this as you know, his right to be a strong king. And like he wants to be militant, and his dad's just not about it. And again, sleep deprived. I don't remember the king's name. But a fantastic characterization on the king. But what I love about Gabriel is he refuses to accept this responsibility and learn the lesson. Basically, he's got to go to the school of hard knocks in order to finally understand where his father was coming from. And it takes a lot of pain and a lot of just working hard, because he's kind of right, because he has to walk the same path that his father walked in order to reach that realization that his father was just trying to give him. And it shows you can give somebody the answer, you know, every single time. And if they don't have a point of reference, if they have a certain belief, then they've got to learn it the hard way. And I feel like that's the core of Gabriel, which is what I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, you said that way cooler than I would have thought to say it.
I sound much more intelligent than I am when I'm sleep deprived.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of fun moments with Gabriel, but a big part of the reason, in particular for Telly, is she's on a mission. She's devoted to that 100%. She's constantly trying to learn more and protect the knowledge that she has, and has to take risks, open up potentially in ways that she never would have before. And that's a huge risk when pretty much her entire world is on the line. So I think that's the part I liked about her.
Yeah. What I love, and Jim, I promise we'll let you speak, but we're nerding out about your book. So just one moment. So
no, go ahead. Tell me more about how I wrote great characters.
So what I love about her is I love that she's abrasive. She starts out abrasive. She starts very, very standoffish. Like she's on the run. We get some very, very cool introduction to the magic system with her and how these things work. And I love how just standoffish she is. And like you said, she has to make herself vulnerable in order to grow, but it is not easy for her. She has lost everything, and she's unwilling to open up to regain things because she has the potential to lose more. And so again, I can see why she is one of your choices. And now I can let Jim talk.
Oh man, all these characters are dear to me. So I'm very glad you guys had fun with them.
You have to choose one, Jim. It's your turn now.
I have to choose one. Oh, I know my favorite. Hands down, my favorite character to write. Let me put it that way, because I don't know who my favorite character is outside of that. My favorite character to write from their perspective is, without a doubt, Amy. Amy
Okay.
is my favorite character to write.
I can see that.
I love writing in her voice. I love trying to replicate her sass. Like, I love everything about writing that character. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that she is so completely, quote unquote, normal compared to everyone else. Like, what does she have to add to the story? Like, you tell me, please tell me. Fix this book for me. No, I'm just kidding. She's so
Wait, what?
normal.
Talk about putting me on the spot.
Right. And I love that because I get to tell a story over the course of several books about a character who has nothing special about them and how they help save the world. And that was very interesting to me, to have that kind of person as part of the cast of characters. So
okay, so
yeah.
I'm outvoted. It's fine. I'm okay. I'll be okay.
She's my favorite person to write. Gabriel was a lot of fun.
You can't throw that in there. Just last minute.
Yeah, she's like, you're changing your answer.
No, I'm not changing my answer, but
we're playing both sides of the field.
What's interesting about it, it's so hard. I wrote these characters, so you know what I mean. Like, I think about one character, I'm like, oh yeah, they're cool, and then I'm like, oh wait, what about this guy over here, like that? So I remember when I was first drafting the story, I knew Gabriel would be in it, but I also knew he wouldn't come in for like over 100 pages. At least I knew that when I was writing along. I'm like, oh wow, this is getting really long. I was like, oh man, he's not coming in for a while. But I knew what his first scene was. Like, I had it so clearly in my head. Like, when I introduce a character, I have to know what their introduction is. And I can see it in my head very vividly. I almost have like the cadence of the prose. Like, I know what I'm going to do with that, like how it's gonna feel when I write it. And that was one of those scenes when I wrote that scene. I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what I meant to do. And it was so satisfying to get to that scene and write it, that it made Gabriel so much fun to write. And that his story just flowed from beginning to end for me. Like, it just, like, I knew where I wanted him to be, and it just kind of, it really, especially in the first half of the story, it got a little weird in the middle, and I had to go back and revise for it. But it really just, it just kind of hits a stride for me when I was writing it. I have very vivid memories of writing most of his scenes in a Dunkin' Donuts at 4 a.m. in the morning.
4 a.m.?
Yeah. My sister-in-law was living with us at the time, and she would make fun of me for leaving so early. And she'd be like, are you like having an affair or something? Like, why are you going out so early in the morning to get coffee? And I'm like, I gotta get my words in. I gotta get some words in. So before work. So yeah.
So, I mean, this is a very nice transition. Your sister-in-law's comments aside. So let's talk a little bit on the origins of Continua, like what made you want to write this story, and what your writing process looks like on a regular basis, and kind of your plans overall for the series. Just to throw a whole bunch of stuff at you at once.
I will withhold my questions until after.
I guess I'll take this piece by piece. I mean, I started writing the story in high school, as a lot of people start writing things, and I completely abandoned it, especially as I started doing more and more music. Then as I started winding down my musical ambitions, I thought, I should start writing again. Oh, don't tempt me. So I thought, I should give this a go again, and I start researching. I start reading more fantasy again because I kind of took a break from reading for a little while there, and I was like, oh wow, I forgot I used to read. I used to read all these books, and then I start reading again. I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. I bet I could do this. I bet I could do this. So I start writing again, and I got about a chapter and a half maybe in, and then I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I stopped right there, and I just started reading craft books and listening to podcasts and like trying to figure out how to tell a good story, because I knew after about a chapter and a half that I was just going to fall flat on my face, based off the kind of story that I want to tell, which was the seventh cadence. Yeah, that's kind of how I got started, and kind of what motivated me is I'm the kind of person, I guess, that when I see something really cool, I'm willing to ruin it so that I can make it myself. Just ruin the fun of just purely enjoying things by trying to build one myself. But yeah, I mean, I was a big reader in high school and middle school. Started with like the Goosebumps series was the first thing that I ever really read, because my friend at the time, my best friend at the time, I met him at a YMCA camp, and he was reading a Goosebumps book, and I was like, that's cool. He seems like a cool kid. I'm gonna read Goosebumps now. And I started reading it, and then we kind of had like this competition of like who can read through them faster. And I mean, it kind of hooked me at that point. I'm like, well, I guess I'm a reader now. I'm just gonna start reading other things. And he's the one who actually showed me Harry Potter at one point. And then a lady who ended up becoming my 10th grade biology teacher gave me a copy of Harry Potter and a copy of The Giver, and I devoured those, and I just kept looking for stuff, that satisfied the sense of wonder that I was looking for. And I kept going from there. And I think also around that time, the Goosebumps days, I wrote my first thing when I was around 11. I wrote a sci-fi thing that was a total ripoff of Star Trek mixed with Star Wars, like we all do at some point when we're 11.
Can we get that on the newsletter?
Yeah, that would be great.
I had looked for that story, and I think my mom has done her motherly duty of destroying it somehow, because now I never have to have that shame of somebody reading that.
She's got it tucked underneath the mattress. Don't you worry.
Right. I'm gonna find it one day, and it's gonna be like, oh no, and then I'm gonna have to share it with newsletter. But yeah, and I did a lot of Star Trek, like RPG, like email RPG. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, like where you like kind of have like an email thread going with a bunch of other people, and you create a story in a universe.
No.
No.
But I did that for Star Trek, and that was awesome. And I thought I was the coolest storyteller in the world. I used to print out what everybody wrote, and I would like review them, and I try to make my story like really cool based off of what they were doing, and trying to make sure it all made sense. And I'm sure it was awful. I haven't reread those. I don't even have access to that email account anymore. But I mean, that's kind of where I got started writing. Is actually a lot of the email RPG stuff with Star Trek. And then when I came back to it, I kind of took what I learned from the past and reading books over and over again that I really enjoyed. And I tried to fold in what I learned from those experiences and reading the craft books into what I do right now. So, but wow, that was a lot. So my day-to-day process is kind of chaotic, I would say, when I'm not in drafting mode, because I give myself a lot of tasks to do on a daily basis, between doing audio work and, helping other writers in emergent realms with their writing and whatnot. But when I'm in drafting mode, I usually do it first thing in the morning. I get up before everyone else is awake, and I write for at least 30 minutes. I write relatively slowly on average, I guess, for the new speed of what authors should be writing. I kind of write closer to, the old school 90s, one book a year pace.
Hey, one book a year is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, or more. But
there's nothing dictating how fast you have to write. I just read Darren M. Hanshaw's The Engineers sequel. It took him 4 years.
Yeah,
and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's something I live with like a little guilt with, because it's kind of like, oh man, like everyone writes circles around me, but I kind of have to embrace that about myself. Like I'm kind of meticulous on how I do things. Like I do things with very heavy intention. I keep very vicious notes and wikis, and I try to, do some character art and do as much to stimulate my imagination as possible while I do it, to keep it fun and keep surprising myself, so that, I try to make something that I like. I also don't like rewriting a whole lot. So when I write the actual prose, I don't change them much. So my self-editing brain is always on. And that's one of the biggest hacks when you're writing, is like turn that off and just keep writing forward. I can't do that. Like I have to do it the right way first. And then if I change it a little bit later, I change it a little bit, but most of what I write, when I write it, is how it stays. Obviously, when the editor gets in there and like, you wrote this sentence wrong, then okay, yeah, I'm going to change it. But, the flow of the words, the story itself, so. Hey, Chris.
Oh, okay. Well, fine. That was a lot, and I'm sure you're tired of speaking, but we're gonna make you speak more.
Yay!
How?
I just need a drink, and I'll be fine, I guess.
Kayla, do you have any questions that you have wanted to get in there real quick?
Yeah, actually, I had a question about the combat that you went with, maybe where the origins came from, the inspiration for it, because it was different. It wasn't what I was expecting. Normally you expect like head-on clashings, but there's a system to the combat here. And I think in a previous discussion, you mentioned it's also a visualization on the cover of Strangers in the Promised Land. Can you talk a bit about it?
Yeah. So the inspiration was really very Robert Jordan. I mean, bull rushes down the mountain. I mean, like that. I don't know what that is, but when Robert Jordan describes, any thing that Rand does with the sword, like I don't know what he intends it to look like, but my mind instantly conjures something. So
that's exactly what it's supposed to do. It's not
right.
supposed to. You're not supposed to visualize it. You're supposed to basically. Robert Jordan's letting the imagination do it. Sorry, you brought up Robert Jordan. I'm the Wheel of Time nerd.
Yeah, I mean, I really love that, and I thought it would be very difficult to replicate that without it feeling like a blatant ripoff of his style of combat. So I tried to take part of that, in that I kept it vague with the naming of different things. And I then added my own thing, because there's a big musical theme in the book, and cadences are, part of that. And then I thought, well, where do they come from? Like, where do the cadences come from? And, I got with an artist and I built all the cadences visually. And, I mean, one thing led to another. And I mean, the whole book is named The Seventh Cadence because of it. I just really like the idea of, instead of having to do, blow by blow, of everything. You know, I could kind of fall back to something that's a little more vague so that the reader can kind of fill in the holes themselves, because really, the more you try to explain something to a reader, the harder it gets sometimes for them to visualize it. And if you kind of keep it somewhat vague, but only point out certain details, then a picture can form. So yeah, that's kind of why I did it that way.
Nice. That's a great,
Mm-hmm.
great question and answer.
I like it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Emergent Realms team. Can you talk a little bit more about like what Emergent Realms is, what they're doing, how you factor into that? I would just love to know more about Emergent Realms.
Yeah, so I'm a co-owner of Emergent Realms, and it's really just me and two other people right now. And we're just trying to write the best fantasy stories we can. That, I mean, it actually kind of just boils down to that. It's pretty simple. And we figured it's probably easier together than apart. You know, I worked with a few other publishing small kind of things like what I'm doing right now. One was Sterling and Stone, and that was a lot of fun to have a collaborative team that you can work with on a project, even if you're taking the lead on it. Like, you know, no one's gonna write the seventh cadence for me, Strangers in the Promised Land for me, anything coming next for me. However, I have somebody I can always go to and say, hey, what do you think about this? Like, just like that, and I'll get a response back pretty quickly. I have somebody I can say, oh man, I really need a graphic for this. Can you make something like this for me real quick? And they'll make it, or I'll make it sometimes, it depends. But it's kind of like having multiple U's, and working with a team like that is great. So it's very tiny right now, but you know, as we find our footing, you know, we'll be looking for authors we can collaborate with to make their stories awesome. You know, the third person that we have is an author I've been working on with him with his book, and it is coming along quite nicely. You know, he's like a quick writer and he's incredibly creative, but you know, I'm working on it with him with like, oh, like, well, what about this plan? Like, how do you fit this storyline in? Like, I want to do this too. And it's like, okay, well, that structurally changes your whole book. So now we got to look at that and we'll figure out how to do it. And that gives me a lot of energy because I love dev editing. That's one of my most favorite things to do, especially just generating ideas with people. Like somebody coming to me with an idea of like, oh, I have this idea, but I don't know what to do, how to fit these two ideas together. I'm like, oh, I can come up with 10 ways to do that right now. That's the thing that gets me most excited in life, is when I get to talk to people and do that. So it's just a great environment for me to be in, to have collaborators, because it keeps me out of my head too. Because then you can fumble, rattle a decision around forever and not come to a decision. But if you can just say, hey, I'm trying to figure out if this is smart or not. Is this smart? I'm not sure if this is smart. And then they can just tell you, what they think. So
awesome.
Yeah. I think collaboration is it's important in any aspect, but when you're trying to figure out, if an aspect of your story is going to work, it's like beta readers. You don't know until you get someone reading it and telling you whether or not it's workable or doesn't make sense, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, there's the added benefits of, one of the collaborators is a pretty good editor. And
built-in benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she'll be doing the editing for a lot of our projects going forward. She's actually doing a pass on the 7th cadence right now, which is very nice. And
like an updated version too?
Right. It won't change significantly. It's just, catching some of the smaller things that slipped through the previous editors' hands. Yeah, I mean, that'll be that. And, when we work with new authors, we'll want to, help them through the whole process of publishing, everything from story creation to, hitting publish. It's a big collaboration. Anyone who joins us, we pay for everything, just like a publisher would. Money only goes towards the author. So, and that's how we think it should be. It shouldn't be like there are a lot of predators out there, so you have to be careful.
Okay, so it's kind of becoming kind of an inclusive boutique small publisher,
right?
Is what you're striving to be. Almost the first thing that comes to mind is Wraithmarked.
Yes, I love them. Yeah.
I can't wait for Sword Kaigen. I can't.
It's gonna be so good.
It's gonna be so beautiful. And sorry. Kayla, I'm gonna knock it back into your court real quick to see if you got anything else you want to pester Jim with.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to know a bit about your experience while you were writing, because you drop hints in the seventh cadence. Like, there's a lot of spots in here. You drop some hints. Were you maniacally laughing in the background at readers, or were you strategically planning? Like, how was that for you? Because I feel like I walked away theorizing about a lot of things. I don't know about you, Andrew.
I've got a few theories, but
there was some maniacal laughter going on. My wife checks on me occasionally, make sure I'm okay and not truly dissenting into madness. But a lot of it's happy accidents. Like you're writing along. I know what I'm supposed to be writing, but then something hits you, and you're like, "Wait a second, I know what to do." And I write this thing, and I'm like, and that connects to this, and then you realize there's this really magical thing that happens sometimes, that something spontaneously will pop up that you didn't expect, that really makes the story better, which is why sometimes you can't overplan. And I'm a big story planner. Like, I plan. But you have to leave a little room for serendipity, at least a little, because something will happen while you're writing. And hopefully it happens multiple times, where you'll make two connections or multiple connections, and it'll make the story even more rich or give it more depth. And creating Easter eggs and creating little micro stories within the larger story that you don't really know is there, but putting them there anyway was thrilling for me. And it gives me places to go if I ever get stuck. It's like, oh, well, I don't know what to write about today. You know what? I should write about that one thing that I put there, and, we'll see if that turns into something. So, yeah.
Nice. Okay, so only slightly evil laughing in the background. Got it.
I
mean, he did say his wife had to come in and check on him, so that implies more than a little.
I guess it depends on your perspective on it.
Like, usually my wife will only come in and check on me if it's been well over an hour. Like, she's just like, what's going on in here?
Haven't gotten lost into the pages yet.
Yeah.
I mean, oh yeah, go for it.
No, you. I've got the gift of gab. I won't shut up.
I guess I'm more curious because for me, this was a bit of a slow burn, but it felt like we get a lot with the characters. Did you do quite a bit of studying on character work and getting good character development, or was it more the story aspect? Did you have one over the other that you had to maybe work on a little bit more? I'm more curious because I felt like the character development was well done, but then the story was kind of seamless as well.
Yeah. So when I'm writing, I think about who the character is when the story starts and who I want them to be at the end, no matter how small of a change that is. And then I think about, well, what are the emotional and intellectual pathways a person has to go through in order to get to that place? And then those are my plot points. And then I then plan a plot that satisfies each of those things. So that's how I try to make it seamless between the character development and the plot development. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked. So,
I mean, if you think about it, like, I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about like story structure and whatnot and character arcs. And there are some things that you can just look up in psychology and just say, like, how does one person get from this place to this place? And, you know, a lot of times they'll lay out those steps and those just become your plot points. And you say, okay, well, first this needs to happen and this needs to happen. Of course, there's other classic structures like the hero's journey and whatnot. You know, I did use the hero's journey a little bit, you know, as one of the things that I kind of overlaid over the book to say, like, okay, is the hero's journey being satisfied? And or to what extent is it being satisfied? And it looked pretty good. So, you know, it wasn't what I used to guide the whole thing, but, you know, I then took that and laid it across and was like, okay, this lines up. Then I took another thing and laid it across almost like a little guide, and okay, it looks fine here. There's a little misalignment, but whatever. So yeah, I mean, that's the only secret is look at who the character is and who they need to be and how do they get there, and then that's all you have to do. I mean, it's probably a little harder in practice, but that's all you got to do.
You say it's easy.
That's all you have to do. So I did knock it to the comment section to see if they had any questions for you.
Cool.
While you were talking, we do have one, and he wants to know Jim's top 3 fantasy series.
Oh wow.
Not your own.
Of course. Oh man, this must be in flux still, but I would say Wheel of Time, Stormlight, and now that I'm starting to get into era 2 of Mistborn, Sanderson might have gotten a second placement in there, just because even though I like first era better, the fact that he tried to extrapolate it was just super interesting to me. And I'm really curious to see how he will continue to extrapolate, because apparently he plans on doing 4 different eras. So I'm like, well, what does a modern world look like? And what does a sci-fi world look like with this? So I'm kind of curious about that, but kind of wanting to beat it out and is kind of Threadlight. I mean, I really enjoy Threadlight so much by Zach Cargyle. Like, it's more concise than Mistborn. There's some similarities, but it's much more concise. And
it's got a faster pace. It moves.
Right. It really moves.
There's a rapidity to the way that Zach writes that, like, quite literally, it will not. By the 3rd book, I mean, that 3rd book just does not stop.
Right. And it kept surprising me. The story kept surprising me. It never didn't surprise. Like, it felt like every few dozen pages, it was like, oh, twist. I'm like, oh, I didn't think that would happen. Oh. Especially in the 1st book, that one kept surprising me. I love the magic system. I love how every single time, like, a character had to make a hard decision, it was a very hard decision, like between 2 very bad choices. And that is one of those things that is hard for me. It's hard to write because I don't want to put my characters in that much pain, but he just did it, and it still feels good. It didn't feel like grimdark or anything. It just felt good because you knew, you believed in the characters and you wanted them to succeed. And oh man. Anyway, I can talk for a long time about Ariel series. So I would say maybe right now he's 3rd. I'll see how era 2 of Mistborn goes and see if he gets knocked down the 4th. But Threadlight's really good.
All right, my buddy Troy, another fellow author, Legends, the Secrets of the Winds of Change. There we go. Or Secrets, the Winds of Change. There we go. I'm very tired. Leave me alone. What other projects do you have planned for the future, Jim?
I gotta write more books.
That's the simple answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's priority number one. I have books to write, and books to help other people write. Those are my priorities. I would love to get you guys some audiobooks. I would love to get you guys some hardbacks that are a little more awesome than normal. I would love to do that.
What do you mean? What do you mean than normal?
Special edition?
Little spikes thrown in,
Leather bound?
Are we talking like ghost pepper, a little bit of cayenne, maybe some Carolina Reaper? Like I've done shots of hot sauce on this channel.
Leather bounds are something that will happen, but I can say that I have talked to people who do leather binding.
Write that down, Andrew.
That would.
I'll write it down and get lost in the move, but I'm not going to forget.
Purely out of curiosity, I have looked into that. I can't make any promises, but I have considered it. So we will see what comes down the pike. And besides the hardbacks and the audiobooks, I would really like to do a soundtrack for the book.
Because you've got a musical background, right?
Yeah. So I would love to do that. But again, that's something that would take away from the actual writing. So I have to be careful with that kind of stuff. So, we'll see.
Well, I mean, you can make it. I mean, you and AR could have a whole just buttload of fun because he tried to start Legend of Blackjack as a he said he got the iPad and it blew his mind. And so he wanted to make an interactive like graphic novel and stuff like that. And that's what Legend of Blackjack started as, and he still wants to make that happen. That
would be amazing.
So like, do we have like a tentative like working date for when you want to have book 2 accomplished, or at least the first draft, or not? Yeah, book 2, first draft done.
No.
Person got confused and thought I was like, no, the first book is out. Anyway, ignore me.
Yeah, no, I did at one point, but my plans changed. I really want to get it to you guys in 2024. That's my plan.
Okay.
It's going to be a chunker. It's going to take me some time to develop and write. My outlines are very extensive, and that's where I do most of my dev editing now. I just do it before I even put one word to paper. I kind of know what's going to happen, with little moments for serendipity kind of open. I'm like 40,000 words of an outline in. My outlines are very long when they're for books that long. So
how long are you anticipating it to be?
About the same length, maybe a little bit longer, unfortunately. But yeah, I would say between 200 and 225 is my plan. So I'm going to try to keep it as tight as possible for as many things I'm trying to do for this story. I'm trying to do even more this time around. So, yeah.
Fair enough. Do you have any more questions, Kayla?
Actually, there is a question in the chat.
Ooh.
In terms of prose style.
I would say, Robert Jordan definitely inspired me for prose
You're making
style.
me so happy.
Robert Jordan, and this is going to be weird, but Michael Kramer. And
for cadence, for
because when I write and I read it back with his voice in my head. And if it sounds weird with him saying it in my head, then I wrote it wrong. So, which makes it kind of weird if I ever have anybody else narrate the audiobook, because it's going to be like, this is not what Michael Kramer's voice sounds like.
Only one solution.
Right.
Well,
but
there are like snippets at the end of the first 2 or 3 Wheel of Time audiobooks where Robert Jordan is there talking about listening to the audiobook back to make sure that like he got his message through the way he intended it to get through, because if the narrator wasn't able to convey what he was trying to get across to the reader, then he needed to execute better.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would love to hear my book in audio just for that reason. That would be fun to see how somebody else interprets the whole story.
Have you reached out to Michael Kramer to see if he'd do it, or
no, I'm not going to bother him.
Why?
Because he's probably a little more expensive than I can pay for. He's a legend. I'm sure he has a lot of projects lined up. So, maybe Andrew.
Shoot your shot, Jim. Shoot your shot.
But you've listened to some of the people that I've considered for narration.
I've even given you ranked tiers of who I think would work as certain characters and why I don't think they would I'm like, this person sounds way too snooty to be Gabriel.
Yeah, I remember that guy. No names, but
no names.
I can't remember what it was, but there was something he would pronounce that would drive me up the wall. It was Gabriel's name. Just the way he pronounced Gabriel's name was just, I can't listen to a whole book of this. Like, there's no way I'm going to listen to that. So, yeah. I mean, I kind of want to. I mean, I don't know. I really like one of the narrators a lot. Because I was considering doing a dual narrator, kind of like Wheel of Time does with Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. Like, I was thinking like, oh, every female perspective, I'll have a woman do the voice, and vice versa for the male perspectives. But I don't know, that's still kind of in the air, because I said, oh, I might want to start production in the spring. So that's kind of up in the air. Hopefully that will still happen, but I don't know if it will, because it was so far ahead, it kind of went a little radio silent because there's nothing else to talk about until that comes up. So hopefully when that comes back around, it'll be fine. But until then, I'm just pinching pennies and trying to put aside money, because it is not going to be a cheap production. So
yeah. Unless you can, record it yourself somehow, it is
at a car dealership.
Yeah. I constantly tease AR about that because he's local to me, so I know what car dealership he used.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, it's just very expensive, and that's probably why a lot of indies don't have them soon or fast. And the ones who do, there are certain ways to do it for cheaper or for no cost, depending on what you go for. But the way I want to do it, it's going to cost. So, yeah.
Well,
so yeah.
Fair enough. Is there anything we want to talk about of Strangers in the Promised Land while keeping it non-spoiler?
Yeah, Kayla, anything? You got anything?
It's so short. It's hard to keep it non-spoiler.
Right.
How about you just set up the premise for us? Can we have you do that? Because it is short. We don't want to.
Yeah, as spoilerless as I can be, it is about two of the characters that we follow in the first book, and a subsequent adventure of theirs. And basically, they find themselves entangled with two enemy soldiers who they think are good guys. And the reader knows that, but they don't. And the reader also knows who Amy and Mara are, which are the characters, I guess. Thanks, I just spoiled that. But
it's in the description.
It's in the description. Yeah, you're fine. It's in the description.
But if the soldiers also don't realize what they know, but you know all of it. So to me, I find that very fun because then I get to play with what the reader knows and what the characters know in a way that you don't see in books all that often, the whole dramatic irony angle. So you get to see them work that out and figure out how to live their lives without getting hurt. So
yeah, it's hard to talk about the circumstances they find themselves in
right.
because all of that is covered in the
very
7
hard,
Kiddens.
especially without context of the first book, you know, because you do need to read the first book in order to really understand it, because I don't take the time to re-explain everything. But you know, it's a fun short tale. You could probably read in a day if you just want to blast through it. It's 11 chapters. So yeah, it's a fun story written as concisely as possible.
I need to go back and read the finished product because I just need to, because I remember the feedback I gave, and so I want to see how that feedback turned out.
Okay, well, I can't say a whole lot without spoiling the book.
No. I'm just saying, for me personally, I want to go back and
it was interesting. I don't even know if you'll notice what I changed, but I tried to change things in subtle ways so that you would know why a character made a certain decision.
Perfect. That fixes like half of my. I just saw recently Dominish gave it 5 stars.
Oh yeah, I saw that, and
that was this morning. So I was just like, that made me incredibly happy.
Yeah, I think I was surprised. I mean, it's a very short book, so it's kind of like, well, I don't know, will people really enjoy this because of how short it is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can Ken Liu. I was just talking with different Andrew D. Meredith. We were talking Ken Liu. Ken Liu made me cry in 15 pages with Paper Menagerie. So you can absolutely do that with a novella.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me from this, my review is going to be posted later this evening, but how much you managed to pack into such a small page count.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit there, and I feel like, kind of like Andrew, for a different reason, Andrew, but I want to go back and reread it just because there were moments that I feel like I could have processed more. Like, I'm still thinking about it. I want to process it and reread it again for that reason.
Right. Yeah. So I think everyone watching this would really enjoy it. If you like the 7th Cadence, you're going to enjoy it. Because of the type of adventure it is, it doesn't have all the flash. It's a much more intimate story. But, you know, I think if you like the characters and if you like the world, then you're still going to love it. So,
I mean, the best way I can, if I remember correctly, sell the book to people watching is it is 2 individuals on a journey of self-discovery while they go through one of my favorite things is the characters go through trials and tribulations, and they kind of figure out how to survive in an ever-changing landscape where their entire world has just been completely just thrown up in the air. They're full upheaval. Their lives have been shattered just due to the conflict in the world at large, and they need to find out a way to lean on each other and come through in one piece.
Yeah. The 2 characters, I just love writing their dynamic. I got one comment that I think my first Goodreads review said, "Man, that one character is super mean." I'm like, yeah, well, I would agree with you, but it's still, I mean, some people are mean,
it happens.
So, and maybe that person will learn not to be so mean over the course of this series. Maybe.
Well, I think we have covered a lot of ground. Kayla, I will give you one last, opportunity. Do you have any questions that have gone unasked or unanswered?
No, I think we have covered a lot here and things I didn't even think to ask. So this was brilliant. Thank you for having
Awesome.
me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This has been a lot of fun. Again, everybody, please make sure to check out Kayla's channel. Jim also has a channel where he uploads YouTube content. And in the description down below, I have linked Kayla's channel and the link to Emergent Realms 7th Cadences page, which will then link, obviously, to Strangers in the Promised Land. So please make sure to drop in the description and check that out. That said, guys, it has been an absolute delight. Thank you for coming on the channel, Jim, and thank you for coming in and putting up with my shenanigans, Kayla, because
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been
I'm a little bit zany.
Thank you for hosting this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been wanting to have you on ever since I read 7th Cadence. So this has been a real delight for me. That said, that's really all I've got for you guys. So till next time, guys. Peace out.